back to Times News, where we reach into the past or future and interview famous people. Today's topic, ancient China. My producers have pulled some prominent figures from the time, but unfortunately there can only be one star, so you, the viewer, get to choose. Let's see, Sun Tzu? Ah yes, 知己知彼, 百战不殆, am I right? Art of War. Man, what a book. Next up, Confucius. Philosopher, poet, and teacher, among other things. Certainly a huge influence on China, notably for having a whole belief system named after him. And last, but clearly not least, as we can see by those votes, wow, it's Cao Cao, an influential general in the War of the Three Kingdoms, as well as the villain, or hero, of many modern games today. I wonder what he'd have to say about that. Well, it looks like we won't have to wait around to find out. Your vote seems to have summoned him. Greetings, Chow Chow. I'd make some small talk, but you know how it is. Those airtime bills aren't going to pay themselves. How do you like to start us off with a quick introduction? Where were you born? Well, I was born in 155 AD in Xiaoxian. My grandfather, Xiao Tang, was a trusted eunuch of the emperors of the Han Dynasty, and my father, Xiao Song, was his adopted son. So you were born into the imperial inside circle. I may have had some important connections, but being a generation removed from an eunuch, I was one of the lowest in the court ranks. Impressive. I assume you made your way up the ranks with this wonderful charisma of yours. Speaking of ranks, what would you say was your first position of power? Well, as police chief of the capital city, Luoyang, I was quite proud of my strict enforcement of the curfew. You see, I have this strong sense of fairness that many in the court seem to be lacking. I heard that you would beat people up who were out after curfew. Is that true? Oh yes, like I said, I followed through with my duties, no matter who the offender is. I also heard that you were fired from that position because of those morals of yours. How do you think that reflects on yourself, as well as the culture at the time? I wouldn't say I was fired, more like strategically promoted. I got a position as governor of Dunqiu County for a time after that. Personally, I find it to be a perfect reflection of their ugly governing policies and corruption. One of the reasons why I strive for a unified China and a government reform. I suppose we'll talk more on that later. Yes, we will for sure. So, I'm sure you didn't remain governor of Dunqiu for the rest of your life. Tell us what you did next. Well, have you heard of the Yellow Turban Rebellion? Oh yes, wasn't that around 180 or so? The peasants revolted against the empire, right? Yes, you are very knowledgeable. See, those wonderful folks over at Luoyang apparently couldn't handle the rebellion by themselves, so I got called back to be a cavalry captain. Wow, and do you have any thoughts as to why the rebellion sprung up so fiercely in the first place? Oh yes, it was the government, you see, corruption, of course, and a wealth of injustice within the ruling class resulted in this extreme poverty for the peasants. Interesting. As an advocate for fair governing, what did you do after the defeat of the rebellion? Well, as one of the biggest forces against the rebellion, I gained some popularity with the big guys and was promoted to be a commander. Additionally, a lot of other captains became quite powerful within their regions, becoming what you would call a warlord. This included people like Dong Zhuo, He Jun, and Yan Shao. Around that time, it wasn't the emperors who were in power, but the eunuchs, a main driver of government corruption, by the way. A lot of the warlords, mainly Dong Zhuo and He Jun, weren't fans of this. And long story short, China broke into civil war with different alliances and warring states ruled by folks like myself. Wow, that escalated fast. Who were you allied with? I would say Yan Shao for a time. Didn't you win a battle against him? Yes, the Battle of Guandu in the year 200. It was complicated. I see, that's all right. And year 200 already, wow. I assume you must have gained quite a bit of influence by then, especially with all these battles you're winning. Quite. You see, I'm a bit of a strategist, a bit of a businessman, dare I say. Throughout the years, I made it a point to stay on the emperor's good side, and by 205, I was basically the emperor. But since I quite like the idea of tradition and lineage and such, I decided to maintain the dynasty. Interesting. How did you manage to stick so closely with the emperor? I imagine there were people who tried to get in the way. I have this motto, you see. I would rather betray the world than let the world betray me. Wow, alright. So you were the one influencing the emperor instead of the eunuchs. What did you do with all this power?
Like I said, I'm not a big corruption guy. I see people for their skills, not their status. That mindset is another part of how I gained so much influence. Anyways, I began making changes in the court and promoted people based on their accomplishments and abilities rather than who their father was. Of course, all this contradicted the feudalistic and Confucianistic beliefs of the court at the time.
So you disagree with Confucius's teachings? Oh no, not all of them. He was quite a wise man. I believe there are still many people in your time who follow his teachings. Yes, he was quite the philosopher, and his teachings were, dare I say, the cultural revolution of the time. Speaking of revolutionaries, it sounds like you practically overturned the governing systems of ancient China. That certainly has had an effect on modern day, has it not?
I suppose it did. Alright then, how about you give us a bit of a bullet rundown of what you did as pseudo-emperor before we continue to the second half? Well, I worked on cutting down on excessive state purchases, especially frivolous things like earrings. Women and their trinkets, am I right? I also worked incessantly towards my dream of unifying China. Basically, I centralized the government into my government because an unified government equals unified people, you know?
Yeah.
Another thing was renting out abandoned farmland to former rebels and homeless refugees, as well as providing them with a quality education to improve their skills and give back to the country.
That's quite smart. Make peace with the rebels, get rent money, use abandoned land, and educate the people. That's like hitting like four birds with one stone. Yup, and not only that, but most of them became farmers or soldiers, which sent food supply through the roof and provided more soldiers to fight to unify China. Wow, sounds like the standard of living really increased a lot during that time. I suppose it did.
Well, that part of your accomplishments isn't really talked about too often, and I'm glad we got a chance to bring that up.
Now that we've talked about some of your wins, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Battle of Red Cliffs. I know it's a really popular battle nowadays, especially in video games and such. We'll get to that, don't worry.
Well, I won't bore you with the details then. It was between Sun Quan and myself in 208. My mistake was underestimating how miserable the swamp would be. Practically half my soldiers died from disease. We were not being chilling. Anyways, Sun Quan won, of course. And you know what? I'm half glad I lost because now he has the disease-riddled swamp and I will never have to go there again.
Wow, I guess that's one way of seeing it. Let's move to the last segment of the show. What are your interests, hobbies, passions? Not to blow my own horn or anything, but I'd say I was a pretty good poet, and writer as well.
Speaking of writing,
Would you like to see some modern works about you? Well, I like that guy there. Very realistic to how I actually looked. The mask is not quite so accurate, though. It's an opera mask. They made an opera about you, and someone wrote a book about you, too.
oh, that's very flattering. You're the villain, though. Oh, that's quite offensive. Why did they do that?
Well, you seem to have quite the reputation as the cunning, evil character. That book didn't really help your case either. Speaking of, I heard that the equivalent of Speak of the Devil in China is literally Speak of Chow Chow and he will appear. That said, what do you think of the way that these works portray you? Well, I suppose they all highlight different things. I'm quite pleased with my legacy as a military strategist, and I don't mind the perception of being morally gray. It's quite true. Right. Betray the world before they betray you? Yes. Oops. Looks like his time up here ran out. What a guy, huh? I quite enjoyed learning all this new history about the Three Kingdoms era, and whoever knew Chow Chow did so much for the people. A lot of people think he's some evil villain, but I guess that just goes to show how much the historical narrative can change the perception of a guy, huh? And because we all know I did some prior research, I'll just give my thoughts on that right now.
That research really made me realize how Chinese storytelling from historical people and events differs from what we're used to with English. An interesting phenomenon I noticed as well is how the uniqueness of ancient Chinese storytelling, such as that Chow Chow opera, seems to have blended with modern storytelling to make things like the Chow Chow music album and the Romance of the Three Kingdoms book and show.
These are quite interesting in the sense that they reflect the modern day China's perception of Chow Chow based upon all these past narratives. Then again, as a foreigner getting information only from the internet, I don't think I can truly ever understand what the general Chinese population think of Chow Chow. I'm sure media within China is quite different. yet also similar in ways I wouldn't expect. I hope you've learned something new about Chow Chow's life and how the ancient Chinese culture and society affected his career. I know I have. Well, I'm sure you'd love to hear me continue yapping, but those folks who control my airtime sure don't. Okay, have a wonderful, delightful rest of your life. Maybe we'll see you on the show sometime. Bye bye.